21st, March the 24th, 2016, Michael Snyder of The American Dream broke an article about the Temple of Baal about to be erected in Times Square in New York City. This story appears to be a developing story, and since Michael broke that article on the 24th of March, there have been some new ties to the story that I would like to bring into a little clearer focus. One of those is, one tie that I believe exists is, if you all remember back the week before the Pope, or a few days before the Pope arrived to address the Congress and the UN, Madonna put on a concert that was about welcoming the fallen. So I believe that ties into the Temple of Baal about to be erected upon Times Square, and more on that later. But it appears that we now have a date for the Temple of Baal going up on Times Square, and that date coincides with the blood sacrifice to the beast, which commences on April the 19th and runs, that 13-day festival runs through to May the 1st. More on that also later. Now, the Temple of Baal, or the Temple of Baal as it's known, was a famous landmark that was located in Palmyra, Syria. And in August of 2015, this temple was destroyed by ISIS. And most of the world recoiled in terror at the loss of a cultural heritage site. So in an attempt to preserve history, 2 replicas of the 50-foot arch that stood at the entrance of the temple will be erected April the 19th, 2016, one in Times Square, New York City, and the other Trafalgar Square in London. Again, these 2 temples, or this one temple, originally was located in Palmyra, Syria, and it was destroyed by ISIS in August of 2015. And according to the Institute of Digital Archaeology, in an effort to preserve history, cultural history, they decided that they're going to erect these 2 temples, one in Times Square and Trafalgar, London, with hundreds more to follow. And I should say, needless to say, a lot of people are quite disturbed by this. And the reason why is because in ancient times, the Temple of Baal, or Baal, or Molech, as he was referred to, or Chemosh, as he was referred to in the Bible, ceremony and ritual, child sacrifice, bisexual orgies were common practices at the altar of Baal. And it seems now we're putting up a monument of worship to this false god in the heart of the world's most important city. Now, I would like to show you the proximity of where this Temple of Baal is going up, and how close it is, how close Times Square is to the UN, the Statue of Liberty, and what we know since 1855 to be the city of Babylon, New York. As you can see there on the map, the Statue of the Liberty there off to the left, right here. There's the New York Harbor. There's the lighthouse. that used to have the inscription "Welcome to Babylon" written on it in huge letters up into about the 1980s. As you can see right there, right across from Long Island, is Babylon, New York. And somewhere right in here is the UN headquarters. And right along here is Times Square, where the Temple of Baal will be going up at. And if you look at this right here, you'll see some pictures later on in this that will remind you of this land design. I don't think that's by accident that this land design was chosen for all of these structures to welcome in what many believe will eventually be the home of the Antichrist. So next month, the Temple of Baal comes to Times Square. Reproductions of the 50-foot arch that form the temple's entrance are to be installed in New York and in London, a tribute to the 2,000-year-old structure that the Islamic State destroyed last year in Syria in the town of Palmyra. Of course, most non-religious folks don't understand who Baal was, nor do they really care. The following is an excerpt from an excellent article by Matt Barber. He describes ritualistic Baal worship. In summation, looked a little like this. Adults would gather around the altar of Baal. Infants would then be burned alive as a sacrificial offering to the deity. Amid horrific screams and the stench of charred human flesh, congregants, men and women alike, would engage in bisexual orgies. The ritual of convenience was intended to produce economic prosperity by prompting Baal to bring rain for the fertility of Mother Earth. Now again, I'd like to show you another photograph of, this is a Google map, and as you can see there, there's a Statue of Liberty. Come on up to the Brooklyn Bridge, and this is about 20 miles from the Statue of Liberty to the UN, which is sitting right here. There's Times Square. Again, Statue of Liberty, the UN, Times Square. And I'd like to point out once again, this waterway, this outline of the waterway, including the land island right there, will remind you of a headdress, a picture of a headdressing that you will see later in this video. So considering the child sacrifice and the sexual immorality that we are engaged in today, namely abortion and now same-sex marriage being the law of the land, these two things being abortion related to child sacrifice and sexual immorality as it relates to sodomy and God's repulsion, his laws and his sayings and his commandments to abstain from such impure acts. So considering that we're engaged in similar activities, perhaps it's only natural for us to have a temple and a ball in Times Square. In the ancient world, the names Baal and Baal were often interchangeable, and they both trace back to the ancient Babylonian god Marduk. The following comes from Wikipedia. Baal became especially used of the Babylonian god Marduk, and when found in Assyria and Neo-Babylonian, personal names are mentioned in the inscriptions. In Mesopotamian context, it can usually be taken as referring to Marduk and no other god, little g. Similarly, Baal, without some disambiguation, mostly refers to Baal Marduk's spouse, Sarspaniat. However, Marduk's mother, the Sumerian goddess called Nishirse, Dimka, Nema, and so forth. These names in Sumerian was often known as Belit, Lady of Gods, and Akkadian. And according to research published by Bruce Warren and John, Marduk was a hunter god that was believed to have been the founder of ancient Babylon, according to ancient Babylonian tradition. The Akkadian name Marduk derives from the Sumerian, it means a hunter god. He is said to have led a revolt against the gods, or a revolt of the gods against his parents, after which he was enthroned as the king of gods. In Babylonian tradition, it was he who founded Babylon. His temple at Babylon bore the name Esgala, house that lifts up the head, and the tower associated with it was called in Sumerian, in Menechia, house of the foundation of heaven and earth. The similarity to the Tower of Babel is evident. If you're familiar with the book of Genesis, this should remind you of Genesis 10 and 9, where we are told that Nimrod was a mighty hunter before the Lord, and the ancient Jewish tradition specifically identifies Nimrod as the one that constructed the Tower of Babel. In addition to Marduk, other names from the ancient world that are linked with Nimrod include Ninurti, Gilgamesh, Osiris, Dionysus, Apollo, Narmi, and Enmerkar. According to some traditions, the original Freemason was Nimrod. He created the first New World Order in the post-flood world, and virtually all of the major gods of ancient Babylon, Greece, and Rome ultimately traced back to him or traditions surrounding him. For many modern occultists, the story of Nimrod is far from done. A lot of secret societies and occult groups have traditions that tell them that Nimrod / Marduk / Osiris / Apollo / Baal will someday be resurrected and will once again rule the world. See, it's believed in occult societies that Nimrod was the incarnation of Marduk. Not the reincarnation, but the incarnation. In other words, those of you that have seen the movie Avatar, where an ancient deity, the spirit of an ancient deity, moved in to the body that was created, a host body. And that's what an avatar is. An avatar is an incarnation of a deity into a host body. Well, with all the preceding in mind that you've heard thus far, could it be possible that we're actually erecting a temple for the Antichrist in New York City this month. You saw how close the UN, the Times Square location for the Temple of Baal is, and Babylon, New York. And again, there's prophetic reason why Babylon, New York, exists in New York. For I believe that what we're witnessing is the revelation or the revealing of what many in the Bible have read for hundreds of years. We're reading or we're witnessing the revealing of Mystery Babylon. So if you're not religious, I know that all this must sound very strange to you, but there are occultists out there that take this stuff deadly serious, and nothing this large gets space in Times Square or Trafalgar Square in London by accident. There are some very powerful people, some very powerful organizations out there that made this happen, and perhaps, just perhaps, someone should be asking them what their intentions are. See, ISIS only destroyed one temple in Palmyra, Syria. But these groups, these people, these organizations, they don't believe in letting no good crisis go to waste. So ISIS destroys one, and we may, as a result, wind up getting 1,000 of these temples erected throughout the world over the next year to 3 years. ISIS only destroyed one, but we're about to get upwards to 1,000 throughout the major cities to replace the one. Why do we need 1,000 to preserve the history and the culture of the one?